Hello, everybody, and welcome into Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodities sector. My name is Jesse Day. Before we dive in, standard disclaimer, nothing here is investment advice. Do your own due diligence. And today's guest is the CEO of Norsemont Mining, a Canadian resource development company focused on advancing and developing the past-producing Choquelimpie gold, silver, copper project in northern Chile. Marc Levy, great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Very exciting times in the precious metal space. I want to kick things off by discussing gold as we sit here today. Gold's at around $4,040. We were speaking before we hit record today that the metal has risen faster than I think even gold bugs anticipated. So what are you watching as the main catalysts that you think have driven the market to where it is now? And how much more room do you think this bull market has to run?
Sure. I originally a year ago I predicted gold would hit 3,500 this year. Obviously, I was wrong about that. Obviously, you see a lot of pressure on interest rates, issues with currencies like the euro and the Japanese yen, and you're seeing obviously central bank buying, right? The biggest thing is you got all the central banks buying into gold. You got ETFs buying into gold. I think there's so many catalysts right now that's pushed gold to where it's at, and the momentum behind it is unprecedented. You know, we've never seen gold move at this level of price appreciation without much pullbacks. Typically, you see gold climbs a bit, takes a step back. So there's so many factors here that I guess all of it together is really starting to see gold break out here. And I think a lot of issues in the world too, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of friction in the world worldwide, and I guess a lot of people see gold as a safe haven, as you and I probably do, right? So yeah, it's interesting times.
Absolutely. And despite this amazing run in gold, Wall Street and the mainstream financial press haven't really been paying much attention. But recently, we did see the chief investment officer of Morgan Stanley come out and recommend a 20% allocation to gold, which is actually much higher than I would have anticipated from a big financial institution. I would have thought maybe they'll say 5%. Obviously, a big paradigm shift from 0%. Do you anticipate more financial institutions and advisors waking up to gold? There's been varying price targets set. I think before we hit record today, you were mentioning price target from a financial institution. Maybe you could talk to us about that and just your thoughts on we're in the early stages, right, of this adoption of gold by the mainstream financial institutions.
For sure. I mean, obviously, I'm a little bit of a gold bug. I'm biased because I got involved in gold in 2019. And I was telling people, financial managers, wealth management, investors, friends, family, back then you should be 5% to 10% gold. And then my view changed 2 years ago, telling people, you got to be 10% gold here. There's so much uncertainty. It's very nice to see. I saw a report today, Goldman Sachs actually targeted $4,900 gold in Q2 of 2026. And their basis for that was that they see interest rates dropping another 100 basis points over the next 2-3 quarters. And they also say a lot of the ETFs, there's a big inflow of capital into the ETFs that are acquiring positions in gold. Central bank buying, China's resumed buying. It's the 11th month buy. And I say, with a smile, likely whatever China reports is not the whole story. So if they said they bought X amount of tons, we all know it's probably 2-3X tons. So because they obviously don't want it to get too far ahead because they're busy accumulating. And they've been accumulating since 2022, I think. I think a lot of the buying in China was prior to central bank buying. It was actually internal domestic buying from what I read. So you've got, so many factors. I've been saying for a long time, and I'm seeing Wall Street's starting to adopt it, as you just said. Look, Goldman Sachs has been putting out targets. They've been very active over the last 3 years putting targets on gold. It's the most aggressive target they put. You've got Bank of England came out, made a comment which is really close to my beliefs and what I've talked about is they're predicting that the markets overall are overvalued with a big emphasis on tech and AI and a sharp correction coming. So that's showing some smart earlier stage institutional money and even potentially retail shifting into gold. But the paradigm shift hasn't happened. I think we're in for some fun. I have my own, we'll maybe talk later about my predictions on gold, which we've already exceeded this year's prediction. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of factors and bankers getting on board. Even from my perspective, the U.S. small mid-cap bankers have been knocking on our door, which I'm like, do you have a geologist on staff? They're like, no, but we have a lot of demand for investing in some gold projects. So there's some interesting situations, and I'll talk some personal stuff that came up interesting with a big CEO approaching me from an industrial company like a consumer products company. So, I think the momentum's building, but we definitely haven't hit mainstream yet.
I'd love to get some price targets for you for gold, but before we do that, I just want to pull on the thread of central bank gold buying because, as you mentioned, China is accumulating likely much more gold than they are stating, as well as already holding much more gold reserves than they're stating as well. But the Bank of Canada, we always hear this, Canada has no gold reserves. Do you think that's true? Do you think the Canadian government is playing 8D chess here and they're actually sitting on a hoard of gold? Or are they really that ignorant? And if so, they're in dire straits right now, right? If they're really going to go into this paradigm shift, the fall in fiat currencies, the rise of gold, the return of gold as a monetary asset, and they've got nothing on their balance sheet. What are your thoughts there?
Wow, you've opened up a can of worms. It's an interesting question because obviously, me being Canadian, and obviously, I'm a big believer in gold. I've got a lot of our net worth tied up in gold equities and physical gold and silver. I think it's very irresponsible of the Canadian government to not have a certain amount of gold in their coffers, like every normal smart country has been doing for years now. And it's never too late to jump on the bandwagon, but Canada's sleeping at the switch, sadly, and really going to fall behind. And I think we're going to get really badly hurt in Canada because they're not, acquiring gold as the rest of the world is doing. And funny topic is, as you know, I moved recently from Canada to the United States because I felt the policies in Canada weren't good for Canadians, and we're not making the right financial moves. Where the U.S. is really jumping on that bandwagon, despite both countries having exorbitant debts and all the problems both countries may have, but Canada's still asleep at the wheel. Sadly, I'm trying to choose my words politely as a Canadian. It's very disheartening to see how badly managed our government is done here, and being left out of G7 countries without buying any gold, backing our currency with some gold is crazy. I don't think we're sitting on any gold. There's really been no movement. Canada's more transparent, so whatever they say, I kind of believe. China, I put a multiplier. If they're selling, they're really selling. If they're buying, they're really buying. I mean, we all know they've been hoarding it both domestically and through central banks. So they've made some smart moves, and they think 10, 20 years ahead, whereas North America only thinks a few years ahead. So it's unfortunate.
Yes. And I would love to get your thoughts on where the price of gold could go. Is your estimate in line with Goldman Sachs that we could see that 4,900 by, I believe you said Q1 or Q2? I think it was Q2 of 2026. Do you think we could go higher? I mean, the way gold is moving now, I thought, as we saw gold climb into the 37, 3,800, I thought maybe we'd see 4,000 by end of year. it's funny, when I prepared these questions originally, my first question was going to be, do you think gold could get to 4,000 by the end of the year? And it's already there, and then some by the time this interview started. So what are your thoughts on the price of gold, maybe for 2026 and beyond?
I mean, a year ago, my public prediction to investors and people and speaking on at engagements and interviews, I was saying $3,500 gold for 2025 and $4,000 for 2026. Obviously, I'm understated and wrong. Although when gold did cross 3,800, I guess over a month ago, I was like, oh my God, you know what? I think we're going to see $4,000 gold by the end or beginning of October, and sure enough, September, October here, and that's where we're at. There's just too much momentum, and you don't see many pullbacks. Like 2 years ago and a year ago, gold would have some runs and then pull back and lose 50% of those gains, but maintain. Now it's just nonstop up, and I guess more and more flow of capital into gold, more demand for gold, a little bit more. It's in the news a lot more than it was before. Before it wasn't in the news. I think cryptocurrency has really stolen the capital and limelight from gold. But now there's been a paradigm shift where you're seeing crypto guys either tokenizing gold or investing in gold. So I'm seeing a shift now from the crypto guys now stepping into gold. And we talked about a story earlier, right? So my views personally, I've kind of revisited that. I'm thinking $4,500 gold in next year and $5,000 gold the year after was still my prediction. But based on everything going on, I may have to sit back and kind of read some more notes and get some more data, because smart guys at Goldman Sachs, and they're pretty conservative. These guys, they don't want to be wrong. They'd rather be understated. And I follow Goldman Sachs closely, and they've been wrong about gold all the time on the understate. They were predicting 3,200 for this year. Then they've always underpredicted. So them telling me 4,900 Q2 2026, that's pretty scary. That's telling me gold's going 5,000 next year.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment for sure. I want to discuss silver for a little bit here, because as gold continues to soar to new all-time highs, silver quietly outperforming gold year to date, now over $49, up around 67% compared to gold's 52%. How do you view the silver market? It's often said that gold leads and in the beginning stages of a precious metals bull market, and then silver ends up catching up and outperforming. Do you think we're in that phase at this point in time, or do you just see blue skies ahead for both gold and silver?
Yeah, so I'm more of a gold bug than silver bug. I love silver. I own physical silver. We own some silver stocks as well. And obviously both metals are performing well. My views towards silver are maybe not as aggressive as some of the silver bugs out there that are talking $100 silver next year. I really don't see silver going to $100, and a lot of smart people that work with me and that are around me have a different view. But definitely there's a lot of torque to silver, a lot of upside to silver. So if I was to go on the records, I'd say I think we can see $60 silver next year, which would be a 20+% increase. Same as gold being 5,000 would be the similar type of thing. But I don't know that I see gold going to 10,000, maybe for a short, crazy stint. Sprott's views are a little bit more extravagant than most. And the same thing with silver. Maybe it does touch $100, but it might be just for a short period of time. I think there's not as much demand for physical silver in ETFs and central bank buying to really give it the same strength that gold has. And gold is still the gold standard, right? Like that's number one. I do feel like there may be a bit more upside from a price appreciation on silver, but I'm not a believer in $100 silver, unfortunately.
Well, let's quickly touch on the gold and silver mining sector. Then I want to dive into Norsemont. The GDX and the SIL ETFs up massively. Last time I checked, it was 115% year to date. I think we're up higher than that at this point. And it wasn't that long ago that investors were complaining about the miners not providing that levered play on gold and silver. Just last year, people were wondering, why aren't the miners outperforming the metals by a wide margin? And here we are. Now they're really taking off. Do you think this is a time where some caution is warranted, or do you think the greater fear is sitting on the sidelines, hoping for a dip and watching these equities run away from you?
Well, I mean, we've seen gold move, and I think a lot of people in the junior market, gold mining market, were projecting that when gold breaks 2,000, we're going to see a big run in the equities, and that obviously never happened. And then it was like, okay, 2,500, okay, 3,000, and really at $3,000 gold, the equities didn't move. Now they're moving. I think that you're going to see, really good performance in both the large cap gold stocks because they're producers. One of my favorites is Agnico Eagle. They reported record gold profits. I think imagine what next quarter is going to be like in the next quarter with $4,000 gold. So I think you're going to see the large cap gold move, really well with profitability. And I think you're going to see the small and mid caps. They are moving, as you said, they've moved. I've been, we run our own family office. We're very heavily invested in the space. And I'll say I've made the mistake, which I should know better, is looking for a dip to buy into some of the smaller mid-cap stories that we like that have ounces in the ground, which is one of our criteria, metals in the ground. And we've regretted every single deal. I don't want to name them because, it wouldn't be appropriate, but I'll tell you, there's 3 deals that we would have tripled our money if we weren't trying to wait for a pullback, and we would have done really well. And now is probably time to buy some of those equities. So I think there's a lot of room, a lot of upside. If people believe gold going to 5,000 next year, like Goldman Sachs does, the time is now. It's not too late. And if there's a pullback, that's where you kind of go in a little bit heavier even. And I've been telling people buy on pullbacks, but we're not seeing much of that. The pullbacks don't last for more than a few hours or a day maybe. So I think there's just too much momentum right now. And the capital flows are just going to increase over time into this sector.
Yeah, let's discuss how Norsemont Mining fits into the picture. Why don't you start by giving us an overview of the company?
So we own the former third largest gold producer in Chile with a full infrastructure. So we've got roads, power, 3,000 ton a day mill. We've inherited, what I was told by the person who put it in production, David Lang, the famous engineer. We've inherited about 175 million worth of infrastructure. We've got 140,000 meters drilled and 1,710 drill holes in our core shack. We've got an existing 2.74 million ounce combined indicated and inferred resource, majority of that, 80% of that being indicated. We've got a path to production on a smaller part of our deposit, which is sitting in our stockpiles in the short term, less than 2 years away. And then this project was primarily drilled down to 70 meters, and it's a high sulfidation system. So you got, high 70 meters of mineralization, but high sulfidation usually goes down 200-300 meters. So when we acquired the asset, we said, okay, we can probably triple or quadruple the size. So we're out there publicly targeting 7.5 to 9 million ounce global resource to expand the overall resource and build out a large cap gold production play. We've got a world-class team. One of our key guys down on the ground there, Michael Thiel, he drilled the first hole at Esperanza, and 6 years later and $2.7 billion in production, ahead of time, ahead of schedule, ahead of budget. So, and he also turned around Anglo's Los Bronces mine. It's a large mine in Chile. So he's a mine builder, an engineer. We've got David Lang, who put it into production for Shell back in the 80s. And we've got a couple other engineers joining our team. So we're focused on taking this, to a smaller scale production scenario, get cash flow, become independent, and develop this larger gold deposit that we have with our team. we recently raised significant capital. We went to the market for 3.5 million to drill, and we ended up closing 6 million. And the funding was led by people like Rob McEwen, the billionaire and gold investor, sold Gold Corp. He's founder of McEwen Mining, super good mining guy, obviously a big gold, silver, copper bug. Paul Matizik, who's a legend in the business and has had a few $1 billion of exits, was a big investor of ours into this round. Quinton Henning, who's very well renowned geologist working with Crescat. Crescat was also a part of it. Larry Lepard, a fund manager out of the U.S., big gold bug. I'm going to call him that for sure. We had a couple other founders of mining companies in there, so we've had a really good capital raise of strategic money from actually Europe, the U.S., and very little from Canada. We focus more energy on the U.S. and Europe and South America. And so, we're in a good situation. We're about to embark on a very large drilling program for the project in all of our high grade zones. We're undertaking an engineering study on our plant to see what we need to fix up or refurbish for the plant to bring it up to speed for production. And we're doing a lot of metallurgical work to better understand the mineralogy and the metallurgy of the different types of gold that we have within the project and how easily it liberates, because we've got gold at surface that liberates through leaching, and then there's stuff that's below the surface and sulfides that may require other strategies. So we're undertaking a very large metallurgical game plan, and obviously we've attracted a lot of powerful money coming into our deal, looking at this and saying, wait a second, this is highly undervalued. We're coming at these levels. We think this is a way to invest and create 10 times their money on it. And they see the upside in the project geologically. We check all the boxes. We've got water. We've got local community on side. We've got permits for drilling. I mean, we're basically one of the more undervalued gold deals with an actual resource and getting really close to a production scenario in the market. And we're well capitalized, obviously, with the people that we have. So really good situation. My family, something that's very unique for the Canadian markets. We had a couple of quiet years. It was pretty tough, and we had to sustain things, and you couldn't raise any money. My family has invested about 9.3 million into the deal through the market and through private placements. We participate at every level. We're in the market buying when we're allowed to. I was averaging down some of my RSP a couple of weeks ago in the mid 80s. And so, we've got exposure financially. We're the largest investors in the deal. And so we're aligned with our shareholders too, right? Like, our motivation is create as much shareholder value as possible. That's kind of how we will be rewarded in the near future here. So we're aligned. There's nobody, I think, in Canada that I know of that maybe depends what words I use. My wife might say worse words, but crazier than us to invest in our deal at that level. There's very few guys that have put, almost 8 figures in their own small cap, $100 million type of deal, sub $100 million deal. So, that's a big show of strength for the company. I've been known for my background. I've sold close to $1 billion of mining companies, 2 large copper deposits to majors, Hudbay and Inmet. And then I've sold a silver company and a coal company. And each time I sell the companies, guys are asking me, like, don't you regret it? Because now your copper asset's a multi-billion-dollar asset instead of, you sold it for 520 million. But the capex on copper is a bit different. This time, I think our motivation is to put it into production, because our capex is not anything crazy to get there with a gold project like this, as robust as it is. Everything is at surface, open pitable, and as I said earlier, we've got ADR effluent plants, 3,000 ton a day mill. We've got a full infrastructure, which is really nice to have to fast track things.
Great overview, and that amount of skin in the game is something that shareholders obviously love to see. I want to maybe pull on that thread of the team behind Norsemont a little more. You mentioned a few key team members there. Maybe you could shed some more light on that team, how you plan to leverage their expertise, and start with yourself and your own background. You mentioned there you've closed some pretty big deals in terms of selling those other companies. Maybe you could dive a little bit deeper into that and just what brought you to become CEO of Norsemont Mining.
Yeah, sure. I guess in 2019, I was concerned about the debt levels of governments and people in North America, and I felt our family and myself we need exposure to gold, so we went hunting to acquire a gold asset. And through my connections, we met with COPEC, which is the largest conglomerate in Chile. They do 24 to 26 billion a year. They own gas stations, they own grocery stores, and they were exiting two gold mines in 2019. And they were investing actually in a copper mine near my old copper project in Peru. They put 950 million in. So we acquired Choquelimpie, and I got involved. The people funding us wanted to see me step on as CEO, so I had no choice but to step on as a CEO and lead the charge. From a background, I've been involved in the mining sector since 2003, where earlier in my career, I did a deal with Mitsui and Rio Tinto and acquired Constancia, which was a large copper deposit in Peru. We advanced that through to feasibility, and we ended up selling that to Hudbay for 520 million. It's one of the larger copper projects in production in Peru in recent times. I think they've put about 2 billion into it, and I think it delivers about 2/3 of the copper production at Hudbay. So that was a great win for our shareholders. And during my tenure of running what I call Norsemont 1.0, the copper play, I also tried to acquire a company called Petaquilla, which owned a very large copper deposit in Panama. And unfortunately, we couldn't do a deal to acquire them, but I ended up becoming one of the larger shareholders, or if not one of the largest shareholders of the company, in tandem with other shareholders. And we kind of took control and put my president, my CFO on the board, and I became an advisor, and our lawyer came on as corporate secretary. So we kind of took control, ran that, and we sold that for 357 million to Inmet and spun out the gold for 200 million. So it was a $550 million kind of exit for our shareholders. And again, so we did very well with that. And then a silver company that I founded, a small silver company in Peru, we ended up selling that, Rio Silver, and a coal company in Canada, Coal Hunter. So 2011, we exited all of our mining assets. We felt mining was over, which probably was the right time. We thought we were going to be, I think I publicly said, I'll never do a mining deal again because I wasn't smart enough to look 10 years ahead. And got involved in founding a payment processor, which we had exited, and one of the famous companies in Canada. I got involved with the cannabis sector, and I was one of the co-founders of Aurora Cannabis, which a lot of people know me from that because that became a $16 billion crazy story. It's still about $1 billion company, but not involved anymore. And then 2019, back into the mining sector. I thought this was the right timing, and we had a bit of a run with Norsemont and raised a lot of capital institutionally up to $1.60, and our stock was trading near $3 and a higher market cap than we are today. So now we've got a resource. We've got our team has advanced quite a bit with some of the people involved on our board, advisory board, guys who have built mines before and had exits. And so, we feel we're highly undervalued, and I think timing is right. We just talked about the price of gold, where it's going, and the equity. So it's the perfect storm going on here. I mean, I don't think anybody could have predicted this type of storm going on with debt levels and currencies and interest rates and tech overvalued versus gold and central banks buying. I mean, there's just too many things going on, wars going on, Russia, Ukraine problems and Middle East issues. So it's like, it's a whole, I feel bad for our kids because it's a crazy world they're inheriting. But hopefully, all of us being smart and exposing ourselves to gold and silver will pay off for our children's future.
Absolutely. I want to dive a little bit deeper into the Choquelimpie project. Could you maybe talk to us about the progress you've made there so far? You mentioned a little bit about infrastructure in place. Maybe if you could give us some more details there, the historic production in the area, and highlights from the 43-101 you think it's important to touch on.
so a couple of things. It used to be owned by Shell in the beginning, and in the late 80s, early 90s, it was the number 3 gold producer. They were producing very high grades, multi-gram gold, which is why we have 210,000 ounces sitting just in our stockpiles near a gram, and people can't believe that the grade is that high and sitting there because they're cut off. A gram wasn't worth it back in the I guess early 90s when gold went sub 300. That was kind of game over for any gold producers. And because it was a producer, it was kept on care and maintenance in a good way by COPEC. We've inherited, a 3,000 ton a day mill, an ADR effluent plant, which is for treating water and recycling the water on the plant. We have backup generators. We have full power. We have year-round roads, and the cost of power and roads is typically a very large capex for most production scenarios. So we don't have that cost basis. We have existing leach pads where we can put gold stockpiles on and leach out the gold from a production standpoint, which is typically the oxide gold, the near surface gold. We've got about 8 kilometers of strike within known strike of mineralization within the projects. And because it's a former producer, there's several pits. Certain zones are higher grade than other grade. Some have more silver, some have more gold. And obviously this being a very robust project, I mean, even, I mentioned earlier, we've got 140,000 meters of drilling. To drill that today would cost you $50 to $100 million all in. So just the drilling, we have all that core in our core shack. So we're in a very unique position. The company itself has an actual presidential decree mining permit from 1983 and 1988 that has sustained itself throughout every presidency. So over the main part of the deposits, we have the right to mine it and a mining permit. And then around all the mineralized areas, we have an exploitation permit, which we'd have to convert a larger area if we wanted to in the future to a mining permit. So we've got a very unique situation, 25 square kilometers, of which 5 square kilometers is kind of the heart of the project. We've got drill permits in hand, community on side. The metallurgical work from the past has demonstrated 80-90% recoveries and typically about 88 to 90% recovery for leaching. There is in our 43-1 talking about our sulfide zones, and there was some conversation, somebody saying, oh, it's refractory ore. And if it was refractory ore in today's market, when you see guys saying all-in cost for producing gold at $1,500, well, if it's refractory, it might be $1,700 or $1,800. Well, nobody cares at $4,000 gold. Our gold is in our 43 is not refractory. A lot of the gold is actually attached to a sulfide, so we may be able to liberate it easier, crush it, run through concentrators, shakers. So there's a lower price capex to maybe extract what we label our sulfide gold. And so we're exploring that and what percentage of the project would liberate that way. And then there's a larger, 20% of the project is oxide, which is very easy to process. I call it throw the rock in the swimming pool, throw in some acid, leach out the gold, to just make it simple for people to understand. So we've got a very unique situation. And as I mentioned earlier, very low capex to get into production because we have so much infrastructure that we've inherited. We have a lab, we have a 35-man camp, which we did have to put some money into refurbishing the camp. And so we've got a very robust situation that I think would allow us to be into a production scenario faster than some of our peers. As a comparable, I look at using a great company called Rio 2, which is sitting at about 800 plus million. Maybe it's more because I haven't looked at their share price in the last few days since gold's moved. But they're sitting at an 800 million market cap. Their grade is probably a third of our grade, so they're a lower grade producer, but they have the cash and they're a little ahead of us, right? So showing where we can be today, sitting at an 80, 90 million cap, they're at 800 million. We're projecting to have more gold at a much higher grade than them. So showing a good comparable to investors to say, hey, when I say this is a 10 bagger, that would take us to that $800 million billion range in the next, year or two to catch up with someone like a Rio 2. And obviously that doesn't factor in, if you want to forward look at the price of gold that some people look at, what will the value be as the price of gold? If you believe gold's going to go 4,500, 5,000, all these prices move with it. So what our family bets on is really simple. We bet on the commodity physically moving in price. So that's where we make a win. We bet on gold when it was 1,600. Now it's 4,000. And then we also bet on the size of the project growing, which geologically this is a very simple project. It's a young system and it's all exposed and intact. And we also have multiple porphyries on the project, which are the engines that drove likely all the gold to surface here, which adds another opportunity to grow the overall size of the deposit.
Well, let's end by looking forward to the future. What are the major catalysts and news flow that shareholders of Norsemont can look forward to for the remainder of the year and into 2026?
Sure. The biggest catalyst, I would say, number one, which the retail market and even the institutional market are waiting for, we're drilling out in our high grade zones. Our drill program, I think, is going to be the number one catalyst. We have areas that have 30 meters of 32 grams and per ton, 32 grams per ton gold, 8 grams silver, that has only been drilled from 0 to 35 meters. So we want to drill that down to 200-300 meters. If we can pull a 100+ meter hole of an ounce plus material, it'd be, our stock would go parabolic. It would be the biggest hole plus South America. So we have 2 zones like that we want to try drilling. We have other areas where we've seen drill holes go down to 120 meters or 100 meters with 4 grams per ton from surface. We want to take that down 300 meters. That allows us to delineate a larger amount of resources through our drilling and also helps us augment the average grade by drilling some of the higher grade zones and increasing the overall grade of the deposit, giving us better geological knowledge. So I think our drill program this year is a very high impact drill program, which will deliver good results that the market wants to see. And I think will get us noticed by some of the mid-tier and majors. And we've had knocks on the door, people in our data room from larger cap, mid-cap mining companies. So we're already getting that traction. Secondly, we're doing a lot of metallurgical work, which allows us to qualify which ore can be liberated through leaching, liberated through concentration or other methods. And I think some of our belief, and it's outlined in our 4301, there is some potential for leaching our sulfide material and getting good recoveries on that, which is very low capex. Most sulfide, most oxide production plays are sub $500 an ounce processing. I think ours is sitting at about 300 from what I heard the other day from our team. Obviously, sulfide, with a plant and all the work that gets done, you're looking at that $1,200 to $1,500 an ounce, and moving up because of inflation and labor, but still very profitable. So we've got the metallurgical side, and then we have some engineering studies going on with regards to the project. We are going to be advancing to a pre-feasibility study or PEA on our stockpiles that we want to put in production in short order here. And we've obviously attracted a lot of new capital. And so we're looking at augmenting the team and growing the team on the corporate development, corporate finance side, as well as the technical side, especially on the engineering. So we're looking at adding to our team and growing our team here with people to allow us to advance the project. So I think those are kind of the main catalysts that will drive investor interest and add value to our shareholders and stakeholders.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to put links in the description below to the Norsemont Mining website as well as social media for people who want to follow along with the company. Marc, this has been a fantastic conversation. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. It's good for us talking high level on gold, and then diving into the details here was fun. And obviously, everybody has to do their due diligence, and I strongly would suggest to your subscribers even stepping into big cap gold stocks. Like everybody, like you said, 20% exposure to gold is probably a smart number today.
Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.